Welcome to Old Movies for Young Stoners, the podcast where cannabis, weed, reefer, Mary Jane, or whatever your generation calls it, is a gateway drug to classic cinema. In each episode, we discuss a selection of films from the past, and our weed experts suggest what strain of green bud goes best with them. This week, we go back to the beginning of cinema itself for a pair of trippy as fuck shorts by Georges Méliès, the man who invented special effects, followed by a lively discussion of the equally hallucinatory technicolor madness of The Red Shoes from Powell and Pressburger in 1948. Plus, we have our first ever guest host. That's all right here on Old Movies for Young Stoners. And we are back on Old Movies for Young Stoners, available on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We just launched our YouTube channel, so subscribe there. You know,
wait, we're on Spotify. Boo!
We are.
Boo.
But how can we like how can we like pull our programming from Spotify later in protest if we aren't there in the first place?
Okay, good point. Good point.
Yeah. Okay, I'm your master of ceremonies, Bob Calhoun, author of The Murders That Made Us, a true crime history of San Francisco. Ask for it at your local independent bookstore. Joining me are Greg Franklin, the creative director of 6 Point Harness Studios, and the animation director of Tig Notaro Drawn, now streaming on HBOMax.
Hey, everybody.
And we have Cory Sklar, our resident bud tender, and your guide on the Hollywood punk rock graveyard tour.
Hey, everybody. I just added Squiggy of Lenny and the Squigtones to the tour. So come on and take that graveyard tour.
Oh,
awesome.
Man. That one kind of hurts, though.
Mm-hmm.
You can find out how to book your Hollywood punk rock graveyard tour by going to Punk Rock Graveyard Tour on Instagram. As I said at the top of the show, we have our first ever guest host in Old Movies for Young Stoners history. She is an actor and voice talent with several film and television credits to her name, including the animated series Lizzie, the NBC medical drama The Night Shift, and she'll be appearing in Chippendale Rescue Rangers, coming soon to Disney+. You can even see her at the 51-second mark of its YouTube trailer. She is Philena Franklin.
Thank you so much. Yay. Thanks so much for having me.
oh yeah, but you've got like a little bit of a history with the podcast and you've got an origin story, if you will. Tell us what draws you to us. What draws you to this?
Well, I would consider myself a young stoner. I am 21 and, I'm freshly able to smoke weed. I mean, I have been for a while, but don't tell anyone. And
don't tell your dad.
Don't tell my dad. He was smoking with me, but whatever. Yeah.
The statute of limitations has now run out, so we're safe to
yeah,
say
we're
that.
fine. It's fine now. But yeah, I am a young stoner, and I feel like I love old movies. It's kind of perfect. It's a perfect fit.
Mm-hmm.
And also Greg Franklin is my dad.
That's right.
Nepotism.
I believe on episode 1, I told the story about how you were inspired in high school to watch every film on the AFI Top 100.
Oh, yes.
And you gave a scathing review of Bringing Up Baby.
I just don't. Yeah, it just wasn't. It reminds me a lot of like The Money Pit or like Christmas Vacation. And the
comedy of frustration.
Yeah, it makes me too frustrated. I get too frustrated.
No, when Greg told me that like a while ago now, I was like, she should be a media critic. She should be a film critic. But there's just like the newspaper industries and the media industries so cannibalized itself at this point that I can't recommend it as a career. So I'm happy this podcast with its 100 plays on SoundCloud can get you there.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah,
exactly.
Hey guys, I've been going to Noir City every night. Noir City is back, and it's in Oakland now.
What's it? What
And-
is Noir City for those people
Oh
like
yeah,
in Australia that
okay.
don't know what that is?
I also
yeah, and
don't know.
Sweden. We're big in Sweden now, guys.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Number
Ooh.
72 in Sweden on Apple
Ooh.
Podcasts. Film. and
Thanks for
television.
listening, Swedes.
Thank you. I mean, you're right on the border of Russia, worried about getting invaded. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast
An escape,
with all
if you
that's
will.
going on in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is the Film Noir Festival, and it's hosted by Eddie Muller, who hosts Noir Alley on TCM when it's not the 31 Days of Oscar.
Boo.
And boo. and yeah, so the funny thing about Noir City, it's been going on in San Francisco for a while. He does tour it around. He just did one in I believe Seattle. There's going to be Noir City Hollywood, and he's done it in Chicago and everything. So he tours these movies around. This year's theme is We Tried to Warn You. So it's all movies about, it's like last night was Crossfire, the movie about anti-Semitism with the three Bobs, Robert Ryan, Robert Young, and Robert Mitchum. And so, anti-Semitism was the theme last night, and racism. And tonight it is more racism with No Way Out with Richard Widmark and Sidney Poitier. And there's also a movie tonight, The Sniper, which is kind of a proto-Zodiac sort of serial killer movie set in San Francisco, black and white noir from, I think, 1951. So a lot of people are dressed to the nines at this thing. I have not been yet. A lot of people in retro suits and hats, and the ladies all dolled up and looking perfect.
What do you wear, Bob?
Tonight I'm going to be wearing my linen suit. I will be putting on a suit and tie tonight.
Damn, kid.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was at the Castro forever, but since the Castro is now being cannibalized into a music venue, which a lot of people are really bummed out about, it has moved to the Grand Lake in Oakland, which is still this grand old theater. It looks right at the Grand Lake because it's got the stage. But that is kind of the bummer about it a little, is like, I'm like, well, if the Castro is out as a venue, which it could still happen there theoretically, because they are still hosting some of the bigger film festivals, but it really is the Grand Lake, because I don't think you could do Noir City the way it should be done. Nothing, no offense to other theaters like Roxy and Balboa, we'll take it if we have to, but it's just doesn't have that big 30s movie palace stage the way the Grand Lake or the Castro do.
You could always go to the Tan Foran discount center.
They're tearing down Tan Foran, man, and making it into apartments, like mixed use. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really want to live in mixed use apartments on the grounds of what used to be an internment camp.
Tried to warn you.
Yeah, we tried to. Yeah, I just like, I don't know. I think there's, I mean, it's one thing to go to Target there, or go to see Iron Man 2 at the theater there, but
for $1.
Yeah. Yeah, no one, there's already, like, there are people I usually see at San Francisco Noir City that just aren't there. The show was kind of packed last night. Oh, and Dana Delaney showed up.
Awesome.
From what was that show called?
China Beach.
China Beach,
and Tombstone.
That's awesome. I love the Grand Lake Theater. It has so much soul there, and also it's the place where Bob Calhoun and I saw Cats.
And we got bombed on Fireball.
We were so wasted.
Yeah, at Smitty's beforehand, because there was a point where we were sitting at Smitty's. I'm like, I ordered a round of shots of Fireball because I'm like, we're seeing Cats. This is the only time I think it's appropriate to drink this shit.
I agree. And also, we went to Smitty's because the alley was closed next door, and everyone listening, if you ever go to Oakland, you got to see a movie at the Grand Lake, and you got to go across the street to the alley to get a drink and a steak and sing at the piano. It is a great place. Old school.
I was so happy it's still there. I mean, it's, considering all the places that haven't survived the pandemic or haven't survived just private equity in the Bay Area,
Right.
that the alley opened its doors last night, and we were like the first people in there. The steak was smothered with garlic and butter and parsley, and it was like perfect. And there's a joint next door for the private equity crowd that would charge you like way more for that steak, and I don't think it was as good. You know, I'm not going to find out because it's even too pricey for me, that place. But and the drinks were strong. Me and my friend Vernon, who went last night, Rosie's going with me tonight, but we were like fucked up for Crossfire. We were totally tore up for that movie.
Very noir.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's the Grand Lake, the theater that would put all the anti-Trump stuff on the marquee.
Yes.
Yeah, their owner is super lefty guy.
That gets my vote.
Yeah, cool. It's a great place. He hires a lot of queer kids. It's a good establishment to support.
And they have the guy playing the Wurlitzer like on Fridays and Saturday nights. It's not just for Noir City. And I like to go there like to see like Blade 2. Let's go to the Grand Lake to see Blade 2 on a Saturday night, because the anachronism of the guy warming up the crowd with the big organ, just like I liked that anachronism. I like that out of time thing. At Noir Alley, it seems appropriate. It seems all lined up. But when you're seeing Barbershop there, or Friday 976 Evil,
or
just
Tales
the
from the Hood
crap that I would go see there. It's just regular shit that's at the movies that week.
I have to say, Oakland movie audiences are way more polite than Los Angeles movie audiences. And I don't know if you saw this clip this weekend, everybody, but
oh my God.
At the Burbank AMC, which there's like, Bob, it's so confusing. There's like 4 theaters on a block radius, and they're all AMCs. You don't know which one the movie's playing at in Burbank. But anyway, the screening of The Lost City, the new Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum movie, the projector broke, and a woman decided to stand up and do her stand-up comedy act in front of the audience on request. She just did it on her own, unsolicited to entertain the people while the projector was being fixed. And that is something that could only happen in Los Angeles. An Oakland audience would never do such a thing.
Oh no. I mean, Corey, you're kind of burying the lead. It was the worst stand-up that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was
in
so
my
bad.
life, and that's saying something.
And it was a little racist, and it was everything you don't want while you're waiting for a movie to be put back on the screen. I'm going to take you to a movie there next time you're in town, Bob.
Yeah, I got to get down there. It's been way too long. I mean, of course, like we've all just been in our house forever. This is the most nights I've done things in a row after I saw Chalky the Funk Wizard at the bottom of the hill, and there was a COVID outbreak. So it was like that put me in the house again for a couple of months. The great Chalky the Funk Wizard, the recorder of our theme song.
The New Beverly is just great though, and I think you'll love it, Bob. I can't wait.
I've been there a few times.
You've seen it since the remodel and everything. Okay, cool.
Well, I've seen it since in the Tarantino era. When I'm down there, I try to take in movies there, even when I hate Tarantino the most. I still like.
Well, they upgraded the snack bar, so I'm excited to take you there.
Ooh, is Norm's still open around there? I usually go there and then go to Norm's for like a
well, Norm's has expanded. There's like a zillion Norms now. It's I don't know if that means the quality will dip.
There's not really any quality at Norm's.
No,
it's good because it's there.
The last time I went to the New Beverly, they had veggie dogs.
Yeah, they have veggie dogs. Also, Pink's has Beyond sausages now. Just letting you know. Yeah, they just added them. So just so you guys know.
Oh my God.
Nice. Good to know.
I'm so excited. We have so many listeners, especially you Swedes and you Australians. I want to hear from you. Please write in. Philena, can you tell them where they could contact us?
Yes. We at Old Movies for Young Stoners really want to hear from you. You can email us at oldmoviesforyoungstoners@gmail.com. That's oldmoviesforyoungstoners@gmail. All one word, no numbers in there. And you can join our 4 followers on Instagram at Old Movies for Young Stoners.
People have always hungered for the marvelous, the wonderful, the amazing. Before the invention of movies, it was the magician who catered to this universal desire. So it was no accident that the filmmaker known as the father of movie special effects was a French magician, Georges Méliès. Méliès is most famous for his surrealistic film, A Trip to the Moon. Completed in 1902, it was the first science fiction movie ever made. Méliès, seen here as the first man on the moon, combined elaborate theatrical effects with animation and special optical tricks. He produced some 4,000 films in all, and in the process discovered many techniques that are still in use today.
And we are going back to the beginnings of movies themselves to start things off on Old Movies for Young Stoners with a pair of shorts from French magician turned special effects wizard Georges Méliès, which are now more widely available on HBOMax as part of their collection of his amazing films. First, we have impish devils stuffing random passersby into the Infernal Cauldron from way back in 1903. And since that movie is only a minute long, we'll also discuss the Old Hag from 1906, where a broke-ass musician stiffs a witch by trying to pay her off with a bag of sand, only to find himself quickly plagued by a dragon, slithering snake men, a giant owl, and a monstrous toad. You can be late on the rent or even skate on the water bill for a while, but you should always pay your witch. Now, you know, watching these movies and you're watching them streaming with this modern technology, but it's like they are over 100 years old. We will probably, even I will probably live to see these movies turn 150. It's kind of amazing what Méliès was able to do. I mean, he directed the first science fiction film with A Trip to the Moon. He created special effects. He saw the potential for films for magic because he was a magician in it, you know. So what did you think of these films? What did you think of the Méliès films?
I didn't know he made so many. That's what blew me away about this. And I can't wait to dive in and jump in head first, because I ain't never watched any of this stuff. My only reference point for this is the Smashing Pumpkins Tonight video, which is which is
pretty,
a takeoff.
Pretty piss poor reference.
I know.
A frame of reference for that.
But boy, oh boy, is it a treat for the eyes and the senses, and really blows me away at what he was able to produce when this medium was so young. Pretty amazing. Was he a stage like director first? Is that where he got these tricks and stuff? Or Bob, what do you know about him?
Well, no, he had I wish I had written it down. He owned a theater, like a magic theater. Magic is really, really popular in the late 19th century into the 20th century, the early 20th century. So he was like a top magician in, I think it was the theater Houdon, which is like where Houdini got his name. That's Méliès owned that. He came from money. His family owned like they were shoemakers. They owned a shoe factory, and he was a guy who was just really, really bored with that life, and he was obsessed with magic, and he became a top flight magician. And then when film started, when movies were, you know, he got a film camera because he was a good technician. He was the guy at his dad's shoe factory who understood the machinery. So he was messing around with film, and he saw film as a potential medium to augment his magic shows, kind of the way they use digital projection today in all kinds of stage productions. That's what he saw it as. And he was filming street scenes in Paris, and his camera jammed up, so the film stopped, and then he started it up again. And when he played it back, a trolley car turned into a hearse because the film stopped. He started filming again, so he was filming a trolley car, and then he was filming a hearse, and he realized trick photography, like, oh, I can just stop the film and put, you know, I could have a beautiful woman there and stop the film, and then a puff of smoke, and then there's like some weird demon creature. And he got the ideas for these movies. So, and it was really just a wallet in his own theater at first. So, and he had a studio. He had the first movie studio, which was like looked like a greenhouse because it was all about letting sunlight in. And so, yeah, he was a stage performer first. That's where he came from.
And I will say, just as amazing as these films are, and as fun as they are, and full of gags and sight tricks and stuff, they are very European. Okay, so for an American stoner like me, that's kind of a difficult curve to get over. So I'm just getting you guys know there. It's so European. So just know that before you get too high, everybody.
I think getting a little too high is perfect for this. Personally. I loved both. I've seen what is it? Trip to the Moon. I've seen that before, but I'd never seen The Old Hag specifically. Ugh, mwah, gorgeous. It was so fun. I think my favorite part was those little non-binary imp guys who just
their faces were so cool. Like, yeah,
they were so fun. Oh my god. The Old Hag was super fun to watch. And then the Infernal Cauldron was just a TikTok, basically.
I'll tell you, that movie, The Infernal Cauldron, really starts to cook once the souls come up from the cauldron.
Yes.
It's so cool. And how did he do that? He had to mess with the actual film and the exposure and stuff, right? That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I was on the Old Hag's, I was on the witch's side in this movie. Okay. I don't think the witch should have got killed. That's what I think about this thing. And so it's kind of a morally abstract, this movie. That's what I'll say. I
fully agree. I was
oh my god, yeah.
I was yelling at the TV, very anti-yellow outfit guy.
I know it was deeply problematic what was happening to the old hag herself. It's one of those things. Philena and I watched these together, high off our ass, and one of my favorite quotes from her during this was like, "I don't know what's going on, but I love it." and then I think when you knew what was going on,
yeah,
you didn't love it as much. Yes. Once you figured out that this was it was like the Old Hag versus the patriarchy.
Yeah. It totally is, because those like gods gang up, right? Like the Zeus type figure shows up to get help this cheapskate musician out. This guy was this ne'er-do-well musician who stiffed the hag.
Talk about a Deus Ex Machina, right? And it's like, that's lazy writing. That's what I'll say.
Oh, absolutely. And I couldn't tell what deities were going on there, but it looked like God was standing on the mountaintop, and then there was one that came out of the coffin that presented a sword, and I thought that was the devil. So because he came out of the ground and was kind of red, and it's almost like the God and the devil are teaming up against the witch, which I found really interesting. An interesting story to tell at this time in history.
It's kind of like the Hateful Eight, where all the dudes team up.
And then Channing Tatum's like the Deus Ex Machina that just comes in and fixes everything at the end.
Justice for the Old Hag.
Justice for the Old Hag.
Justice
old
for
hag.
The Old Hag.
Justice for the Old Hag.
Free the hag.
Free the hag.
But yeah, it does look amazing. And Méliès he's like almost a proto animator in a way, because a lot of the special effects are just kind of painted backgrounds. They're like painted pieces of wood, and it is when you look at his sketches, that's what they look like. It has his style in everything.
The artistry is just out of fucking control. I mean, it's just so beautiful. And you've got basically one shot where all the stuff is very proscenium framing, staging, but it would probably only work from that very fixed angle. I think if you move the camera left or right, it might destroy the whole amazing illusion. When you kind of consider that these amazing walls of bricks and towers and stuff that are all around are all painted plywood, it is just stunning to think of life-size paintings that were involved in those sets.
My dad was telling he was telling me this when we were watching it. He was like, that's all paintings. And I was so high. I was like, oh my God, it's paintings. He's climbing a painting.
Yeah, it's amazing how that's what gives you the magical feeling when you watch these shorts, is the sets that are hand painted and the attention to detail. And it's just one set like just takes you to this magical world. There's one point in the Old Hag where the guy saving the damsel in distress takes a little hammer and he hits through a door, and it breaks away in like this beautiful, perfect cartoonish way, and that was very impressive.
Yeah, he so did not deserve her.
No, she was way too pretty for him anyway.
I don't know, man. Some of the actors in these shorts are pretty rough looking. That's what I'll say. I don't know.
It's hard to tell with those wigs, you know, like these crazy. They didn't, you know, as amazing as the sets are, the makeup is maybe not as interesting.
Oh yeah.
The Cauldron. Let's talk about the Cauldron for a second. So this was a very short one. And this dude is just throwing ladies in a he's just boiling them to death, right? That's what this whole thing was about, right? There's nothing else to gain. Okay, cool.
Well, he gets his comeuppance.
Oh yeah, there's a comeuppance in the end. What were these made for? Were these made for just in theaters, or what were they for?
He was really just putting them in his theater, which is kind of why stuff got a little weird business wise. You know, there's not really much of a film industry yet. He's inventing it. He's his studio's like the first studio, and he would sell prints to them, and eventually his brother took care of like US distribution for him. His films were popular enough that like Paith would just like make knockoffs that when you see them next to the Méliès ones, they are not as good, but they're just total, like they're almost like Turkish Star Wars level ripoffs of his. He just really saw it as an extension, I think, of his magic show, and he had a theater, and he was going to show them in his theater, and that was going to be an attraction to his movie house, his magic house.
I noticed some Pepper's ghost effects in these shorts, so
maybe that's how he did those ghosts, flying, right? Spirits. Philena and I watched a few others. We watched the hilarious posters.
I watched that one. It was good.
It's also very short. And it seemed like that was almost a precursor to cartoons, you know, where every title in the bookstore comes to life. It was kind of the same, sort of bespoke that genre. And it kind of made me wonder, like, how much did this stuff influence Chaplin, Keaton, Harold Lloyd? Because a lot of that is predating him by like 10 years. How much did this stuff get over here as a curiosity? That trip to the moon thing must have set the world on fire.
It did, until they showed that movie of a train coming and everyone ran out of the theater. And that one just blew it out of the way. He was like,
what did they think? Like, it's one thing if a train's coming at you. What about a giant bleeding moon face?
That's what I say. You know, he's like, damn, I put all this attention to detail in my movies, and I just could have shown a fucking train coming at them.
Well, the train came first, but I think the train is what led Méliès to start playing with his camera. But I'm walking on the joke with facts. Sorry, Cory.
It's okay, but it's like, okay, all
edit this out.
The train came first, and then everyone saw that moon. They're like, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. We know it because we saw the train.
Speaking of these movies' influence, if there is a documentary which I've watched twice as prep for this to be the know-it-all and the mansplainer, is there's a documentary on HBOMax hosted by probably not our friend Leonard Maltin. He's the narrator on Méliès, and it's really about what happened to Méliès, because Méliès at a certain point, and this is in that Scorsese movie Hugo, where he burns all his negatives. He just like, he does this very, very like French, like, it doesn't matter, I'm burning it all. He might have just read Sartre or something. And so because they were selling these things in the United States, there were these alternate prints and negatives. And the person who owned them for a while before turning them over to the Library of Congress, where they were able to, a lot of these movies come from that, where it's just been this lot of detective work to find better prints of these things, and then to use terrible chemical processes to restore them. that you can't do in the United States. So they had to go back to France, where they're like, we're going to just destroy our environment. We use nuclear power. We don't care. But Leon Schlesinger had a good section of the Méliès library for a while. He
really
was
interesting.
Cool.
Merry Melodies, the person behind Warner Brothers cartoons. We have Bugs Bunny, because of Leon Schlesinger. He was into Méliès enough that he had the collection. It was his personal collection for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the guy who was, urban legend has it, had a stutter that was made fun of by the creation of Porky Pig. And he's like, that's funny. Didn't get that he was the butt of the joke by all the animators.
So what weed specifically do you think gets you there for the Méliès collection on HBOMax?
So this is a real buzzy European feeling thing. This is, you guys might disagree. And Greg and Philena, it sounds like you were high off your ass. I don't recommend getting too high. I don't recommend getting West Coast indica high on this. I recommend getting early 1900s, little buzzy fuzzy, like Newsies kind of high. So I recommend having a little puff off your glass pipe of lemon ice or something of the sort. It's a sativa dominant strain, and it gives you a little focus, it gives you a little energy, and so I say take a puff of sativa. I
smoked Runts, which is a hybrid. It's 18% THC, delicious, so good. I felt really, honestly, I got super high, but I felt so good the entire time, and I was just kind of, while I was watching it, just letting my brain melt and kind of enjoying the history, and just kind of while I was watching it, I was like, this is so old. It was great. I had the perfect, I felt like I was in the perfect space. So,
and can you talk about what is Runts?
It's a hybrid. It's very sweet. I had a joint, delicious. It's very uplifting. I think it's uplifting, but my brain was still melted.
I discovered these things when they, not long after they first were put on HBOMax. And I had to remember what I was smoking back then, because there was a night when I got really stoned and the algorithm of HBOMax was like pushing the Infernal Cauldron at me. It was like, this is like based on the other crap you're watching, this is what you should watch. And I'm like, what the fuck is the Infernal Cauldron? I was at that right point of high. And I think back then, and I still have some, it's here, like there's Shake. Was Mendo Breath, which is an indica strain made by crossing Mendo Montage with OG Kush Breath, and it's 19% THC. But the organization of these shorts on HBOMax isn't really the best. Sorry, HBOMax. Thanks for putting them there. But it was just one of those things where I watched the Infernal Cauldron. It's over in a minute. And then I'm like, what the hell is the Old Hag? Because it was like, watch, there's the chain of, you should also watch these. Then I watched, Four Heads Are Better Than One, which is the one where Méliès himself is cutting off his heads, and then his heads are on the tables and they're talking to him. And Whimsical Illusions, and eventually getting through The Witch and Trip to the Moon. And just really high, just going through them in that kind of obsessive stoner way of clicking on each next one, going, are there any more of these? I'm in the zone for these things. So I recreated that and smoked some Mendo Breath, which, Greg often has Mendo Breath. And, yes, named after the Franklin family, really. It's just that right level of stone to go through all these shorts, and some of them, like Philena said, Méliès he made the first science fiction movie, he created special effects, and he made the first TikToks. For my own, like, I would love to be super, 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 super high to watch all of these, but I feel like I can't quite recommend that. For navigating HBOMax and finding these things, you need to stay a little sober for that. And
actually looking it up was kind of a chore. So finding these things on there. So I was pretty high, but Philena was there too and got to appreciate the fruits of my labor in unearthing, excavating. It's like probably easier to find the Beatles Butcher cover at Amoeba than to find the Méliès shorts on HBOMax. But I did my best. And I was smoking lemon margie.
They did have them as a collection for a little while, which is where I got the idea for this episode. Is like, oh, because I went to the TCM hub on HBOMax, which if you go all the way to the bottom of HBOMax, you'll see the hubs, and there's DC Comics and Merry Melodies or Looney Tunes, and HBO, which is where the Sopranos live. And there's the TCM hub, and it's like popular now on TCM hub. And at the bottom, and there were so many old movies for young stoners there. That's what's there. And it was like 2001, of course, Seventh Seal, The Time Machine, George Powell's The Time Machine, the Méliès collection, and our next movie too, which we'll get to. Red Shoes was there, Represent. And but now there was a Méliès collection for a while, but I cannot for the life of me find it anymore.
They're actually redundantly on there, I noticed, because if you look up the Old Hag, you'll find the Old Hag. But if you look up the Méliès documentary, so many of them are extras. Some but kind of branded differently. So if you go to the Méliès documentary and are looking for a bunch of them, they won't have all of them. But there's a selection of them that are kind of double posted, as it were, that you can kind of find together, but I didn't notice that until later.
Now, they are available on archive.org, which doesn't have like a Roku or Apple TV app. So
the color ones,
they are colored. I don't know if they're the restored prints though. HBOMax probably has the very best prints, where what you'll find on you can find a lot of these on YouTube. They're very old, so they're very public domain, but they might be just kind of crap transfers or incomplete and things. But they are on archive.org, which hires librarians, so they're much easier to find there. Which HBOMax, please hire some librarians. Like they got a master's degree to learn how to help people find things in a collection. And Netflix, you are some fucking librarians too. Like represent librarian brothers and sisters and non-binary librarians. Just give them a few jobs. Stop letting marketing handle it. The marketing people, they're terrible. Don't let them do this. Get some couple librarians giving people the stink eye to make things findable on your sites. I'm on my soapbox about this as a former library.
That was an excellent rant, Bob.
Okay, so I don't think I need to tell.
Don't forget Hulu.
Oh, Hulu. Hulu, like
every time I click into Hulu, I dread it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh
yeah. I would love to make a movie where the librarian shows up to Hulu to try to fix it. Just a whole 90-minute comedy of that. Like, just
Philena will hate that movie because it'll be so frustrating.
It'll be like Patton when George C. Scott shows up to North Africa and all the army guys are just kind of sleeping in their bunks and not doing anything, and they're all like have their buttons unbuttoned, and he's dressing them down.
Swine.
Yeah, slaps them for crying. The Infernal Cauldron and the Old Hag can be found with several other Georges Méliès shorts, including the very first sci-fi film, A Trip to the Moon, in the TCM hub of HBOMax. And they are also available on archive.org with several other Méliès films.
The Red Shoes, daringly original musical that captures all the glamour of the south of France in exquisite technicolor, blending compelling beauty and high drama with a love story of sheer enchantment, assembling a cast of international stars to endow an enthralling film with their rich vitality, and making the outstanding debut of this or any other year, a lovely red-headed girl graced with all the talents, Moira Shearer.
For our feature film, we have The Red Shoes, a lustrous technicolor delirium from filmmaking duo Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger in 1948. In it, Moira Shearer plays aspiring ballerina Victoria Page, who is brought to the brink of madness as she is forced by societal convention to choose between her need for love and her desire for the dance. After one of the most surreal ballet sequences ever committed to film, Victoria finds that separating herself from her art might not be possible. As in the Hans Christian Andersen story that inspired her ballet, once you put on the red shoes, they can only come off in tragedy.
Ooh.
So I have seen the Red Shoes before, but it is so good. I'm always happy to rewatch it. It's one of my favorites for sure. Victoria Page is an icon, and she's the best. One of my favorite characters. And Moira Shearer is such a good actress. The performance is incredible, and the costumes are beautiful, and it's such a wonderful experience just watching this movie. It's the best. It definitely has the like 1940s style acting, which is, its own thing. It's a whole own thing, but it's still so good and so fun. Oh, I love it. I love this.
You were doing a pretty funny impression of that one society matron in the beginning there. Ooh.
Oh, yes. I love that voice so much. Oh yes, hello. Yeah, so good.
The pearl clutching voice.
Oh heavens.
Yeah.
It is the best pearl clutching voice in any movie.
Oh yeah.
I wish I had that actress's name brought up. But yeah, she's great. They were going to make it with an actress, but they had, when the film, because of World War II, got delayed. It got delayed by global conflict. And then when they were making it again, they really wanted to find ballet dancers, ballerinas that could act, because they didn't want to do all the cutting, the intercutting you have to do to, like, the doubling that you would have to do to have some actress who wasn't a dancer play the part. But yeah, they wanted to do these kind of tracking shots through the surreal dance sequence that were only possible with people who could actually perform the dances.
I was just blown away. I've never seen this before. And the centerpiece of the movie is the Red Shoes play. It's very meta, and it's very it's a commentary on, being an artist and wanting to work. And it touches so much of that it's always so self-indulgent when Hollywood makes a movie about directors and we're making a movie and we're in LA, and it's just, I hate that shit. But here it works because it really gets to the heart of needing to create. And once it gets to that amazing centerpiece of the film, which is the Red Shoes play, that I mean I can't even talk. It's hard to just talk about what the artistry that went into filming that sequence. It's not just a straight play, though. It starts to get surreal, and at one point I think it's like a stress dream in a way to her, because she's so caught up in wanting to create and dance, right? So you don't it kind of blurs the lines of what we're watching. Is this a dream? Is this a real play? I will say, though, this is going to be controversial. It kind of blows its load in that centerpiece, because it you never get to that high again as you do during the middle portion of the film with that Red Shoes performance.
I agree.
Well, that may be the point. You're always chasing that dragon. That could be. I remember this film as being a lot more out there from the first time that I'd seen it. When I watched it again, it was a little more conventional. And yet, I think the reason for that is, number one, because that centerpiece is so surreal and spectacular. But there are so many great filmmaking choices. There are so many innovative transitions, and what I feel this movie plays with the objectivity of seeing a performance in a theater and the subjective experience of watching a movie. That's what makes it so amazing, is that it's kind of getting into her mind and getting into a kind of space that doesn't exist, that is surreal, that truly is living in the abstract. I mean, I've never really experienced this, but you kind of get that feeling when you're watching a virtuoso performance, and it's just slightly on the edge of being out of control, and yet it's all pulled together so brilliantly. That's like this is the cinematic equivalent of that. It's really interesting to think of it, because I tried to place it in context with things like Busby Berkeley and, you know, other kind of musicals that are really beautiful too. But I think this has like a weird, maybe it's a psychological edge that this movie has to it that really make it a cut above. And I mean, this is really one of the most beautiful things ever filmed. One of the most beautiful movies ever filmed, and the colors are just extraordinary.
I don't mean to say that the movie lags after the centerpiece, because I was never bored during this movie, and it's pretty long, right? It's over 2 hours.
Yeah,
a lot of today's filmmakers could really take a lesson at the way this movie's paced. It's paced so well, and yeah, I was never bored once. And what you're saying about it, the psychological, it's deeper than most movies made today. It hits a piece of the psyche of being creative, that and the heart and love, and how all that clashes, that most pieces of art just don't do. Now the movie starts off, it's not just dancers too. There's a musician, Julian Krasner, in this movie, right? Victoria Page's partner. And the movie starts with him going to see a play and hearing his music being ripped off. So it immediately starts with like that, like bitter edge that being creative gives you. You know what I mean? And that kind of really struck me. I thought that was really smart to write that. This movie starts off with a dude being ripped off artistically,
and
it's so chaotic, that beginning too. I love that. I love to see this guy who we just see him as a fan at first, and I love that shot of him jumping over the seats all the way down to the front row like he's the biggest fan. Your entertainment choices are fairly limited back then, I imagine.
Yeah, let's talk about how well-rounded each character is. Like, not only Krasner, the composer, you have him, just this young kid trying to make it as a musician, and you feel his passion. Victoria Page, just gosh, so beautiful, such deep. But the producer guy who's making it all happen, very deep character. He's like a kind of a sad, heartbroken rich guy, right? And then
I really want to talk about Anton Walbrook's Lermontov in this. He is the producer of the ballet, but he's also kind of like a Bond villain of ballet. You know, it's like, so Mr. Lermontov, do you want me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I want you to dance like you've never danced before.
Exactly.
Oh God, so
but
true.
Yeah, he's so good in this, and he's also good in what is it, Powell and Pressburger's previous film to this. What is it, The Adventures of
Black
Colonel
Narcissus.
Blimp? Is he in Black Narcissus? But no,
I don't know,
Colonel
but that
Blimp
was their
one.
that was their previous film to this.
Maybe Colonel Blimp was before Black Narcissus, but that movie's also on HBOMax and the TCM hub, and it's pretty amazing too. And yeah, he is great in everything he's in with them, and he's at his best here. The first time I saw this was probably in the 90s, because Scorsese's really into it, and you know, just whatever Marty said, I must watch this, and I might have even watched it on VHS and a way you shouldn't, not the beautiful way it's presented now on HBO Max. But what was striking to me back then, and this is at my most obsessed with John Wayne and John Ford and American masculinity. So here I am watching The Red Shoes at 22 or whatever. And there's the part where Julian Krasner says, like, to Anton Walbrook, who is maybe he's gay, maybe he's not, it doesn't really go into that, but he's way into ballet, but he says, you're jealous of her, you're jealous of Victoria. Walbrook says yes, and it's like, to my stupid mind back then, the idea that a man was jealous of a woman was like revolutionary. Not jealous that the other guy had the woman, not jealous that the other guy was married to the woman, jealous of that, but that he was jealous of the woman and her talent and her ability.
Yes,
Mhm.
because he is definitely has the same sickness that all artists do, but he is not creative. He's the producer, and his art is in manipulating people into putting on these shows and to being the best they can be, and he does it in a very ridiculous, over the top way where you have to sacrifice your life to be as good as you can be. That's his passion. That's his sickness. He doesn't know how to have a happy crew, unless they have devoted their lives to him.
Talk about, is he gay or not? What about that choreographer who I loved, and his wife? Gosh, she is amazing. There's some of the best characters I've ever seen in a movie. He's so funny. And
Mhm.
This movie spans a period of time. They work up to the Red Shoes, the play, and they work on it as a company, and it's a huge success. And they go forth and produce other shows, and it's nothing ever hits the highs of the Red Shoes on purpose. It's in the script, but by the end of the movie, you really feel like you've been spending time with this production company, and you get to know them, and you feel like the crew and everything and how they work. And even though it's a surreal old ass 40s super ass British movie, the humanity and camaraderie of like working in a company comes through very, very significantly in this movie.
I think that the first scene where you're really kind of introduced to the entire the whole company, I think it's one of the best. The beginning where everyone's kind of doing their own thing and like, who's in charge around here? What is going on? What is happening? Who can I talk to?
That scene is filled with such energy. It's
mhm.
it's so fun to watch.
It's my favorite. And also right before the Red Shoe starts and everything is like going wrong, it's perfect. It's so it's like, that's real.
That's really what a relatable movie.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of influence in today's film, or at least people trying to get there. Most notably recently, the movie Annette by Sparks and Leos Carax steals a whole hell of a lot from this movie. And I'm like, why even watch Annette when you could just watch the Red Shoes?
Well, there's the Black Swan, which I don't think exists without the Red Shoes. And I would say both versions of Suspiria.
Absolutely.
The Argento and the newer modern dancey one that's a little too long. But both versions of Suspiria. And of course, Scorsese, big Powell and Pressburger fanatic.
Mean Streets.
Well, he talks about, there's a lot of documentaries on them on YouTube, and Scorsese talks about showing Mean Streets to Michael Powell and him thinking there was too much red in it. And he's like, the whole reason there's red in it is because of you. But then Scorsese does the film tech thing, like, oh, it's Eastman. I was using Eastman color instead of free strip Technicolor, and that's why the red was different. But the Scorsese was such a fanatic that his film editor, Thelma Schumacher, was who edited Goodfellas and a lot of Scorsese movies. She met Michael Powell, and even though she was 30 years younger, she married him, and she says they were the happiest years of her life. So there you go. If you're that into movies, you're going to marry Michael Powell, I guess.
Powell and Pressburger. There's like a few amazing title cards to this movie. One in which there's this like super muscly guy hitting a gong with a hammer from frame one. That's not even part of the movie, but I'm already hooked. And then there's that great production card with the archery. Their production company was, I believe, the Archers.
Yes.
And it's just like, I don't know. It's a real shame that Michael Powell kind of lost his career after making Peeping Tom, which was no more outre than Psycho, really. But they came out the same year, and because I guess it's the British film, maybe they were more uptight back then, which is ironic for Hitchcock. I would love to have seen what he would have continued to do throughout the 60s, especially with his amazing use of color, which is probably unparalleled even to this day.
Yeah, we got to talk about Peeping Tom in a Peeping Tom episode. but
Mhm.
he made a William Castle movie on the wrong side of the pond. And I think when he made that movie too, Hammer was just starting, and Hammer Films, who made all these Technicolor or Eastman color, whatever the color was,
Mhm.
these full color horror movies, kind of remakes of Dracula and Frankenstein. Like, they were considered, like, it's hard, people watching those now wouldn't see how scandalous they were, but I wonder, hearing about all that scandal over Peeping Tom, if Rank, who were this kind of uptight, film company that also didn't like the red shoes, they four-walled the red shoes on Broadway or off Broadway, some American
Mhm.
distributor, and it played for 2 years. So it was the American audience that saved the red shoes, because they just thought the red shoes was too out there and too disturbing. And they did the same thing with Peeping Tom. And I'm like, God, if they just had sold it to Hammer would have known what to
Yeah.
do with it.
Mm.
But yeah, he made a William Castle movie, basically.
And
It's like Psycho, man. Like it's you see the parallel right there.
it wasn't received well. It kind of ended his career. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, it did. It did,
Wow.
and it's an amazing movie in its own right. I mean, it's he I love every movie I've seen of his. Black Narcissus, I love that. That one's crazy. You can't go wrong with at least I haven't yet with him.
I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, he directed Thief of Baghdad in 1939 for the Korda brothers, which is basically Disney's Aladdin much earlier. And it's great. Warning on that, there is a lot of brown face in it, but it also has Sabu as the main supporter, or one of the main characters, and
Yeah.
Indian superstar of the 40s or 30s and 40s, which is always a weird thing, because it's like, these movies in the past are more racist, but then they had Sabu. And I know if Disney had anything close to Sabu as a star, they would be just so patting themselves furiously on the back over it. And that shit existed in the 30s.
Yeah, instead they had Kurt
Yeah.
Russell.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I love The Thief of Baghdad, which is pre-Pressburger Michael Powell. And I like his war propaganda movie, 49th Parallel, which was with Pressburger.
Yeah. So they were co-directors?
They had a co-writing, producing, directing credit. Michael Powell is really the director, but I think Emeric Pressburger, who was really writing his ass off on these things, understood like the whole auteur thing, even like maybe before auteur theory had been really voiced. That he wanted that equal credit, because he saw where the writers like, fuck the writer. He saw where that was going, so he wanted he wanted that co-credit.
Gotcha.
So they share credit on those three things.
It's really fun for me to watch this movie and seeing all the really well directed dance scenes, because the only other dance movie I have to compare this to is Cats.
The special effects are so much better in the red shoes than Cats, I have to say.
It's true. I hope that me and Bob could get drunk at the alley and watch the red shoes at the Grand Lake someday, and not Cats ever again.
What kind of weed goes with the red shoes? What did you guys smoke or ingest for this?
So I smoked out of my bong. I smoked Golden Hour, which is, I believe, a Maven Genetics original. Not sure.
Not a sponsor.
Not sponsored at all. But I have my little card it comes with. So it's an indica leaning hybrid with effects of a relaxation, euphoria, and stress relief, with a grassy, earthy, and spicy flavor profile. I would say that's accurate. This movie does not benefit from an indica, I think, because when the red shoes, the middle part, the beautiful middle section was over, I was about to fall asleep. I was so tired. I was too into couch. Too indica couch. So I think a lighter sativa hybrid would go way better something that is just perky, fun, and that you can really like enjoy the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that sativa is something that will help you keep your brain pace with all of the crazy stuff that keeps flying at you throughout this movie. I think it's important to remain a critical thinker in a way of what is happening to Victoria throughout the film, and the forces of patriarchy that are basically driving her to make the impossible decision that leads her to jump in front of a train. Spoiler alert. It's very tragic and so needlessly so, you know, like it's kind of heavy. So I would probably go with the sativa dominant hybrid, something that'll keep your brain working. And if you want, I always make this recommendation, but I would consider perhaps on a second viewing to turn the sound down and put on a different record and just be mesmerized by the visuals of this film.
I agree with both of you. I went with a sativa on this called Sugar Cone. It kept me focused. It had my brain being in a creative mode and kept me energized and tingly. So I recommend Sugar Cone, which was on sale at my local dispensary. But yeah, a sativa definitely in my bong kept me fuzzy, buzzy, and also feeling very British, which this movie also, again, it's like the last, you know, that those Malays shorts are very French. This is very British. It is not a Snoop Dogg West Coast vibe. Okay, it is British as hell, but it's the good type of British. So yeah, everyone see the red shoes and smoke a sativa, and you're gonna have a good viewing experience.
Maybe some tea.
Yeah.
This show is like a lot of firsts. It's our first guest host, our first woman host, our first host under 30 or 40. And it's also our first foreign films and our first silent film. You know, we've been very American and very sound. And is it our first color film with the red shoes? I think we've all been in black and white up to now.
You might be right. I mean, technically the Méliès shorts were also technically in color too.
Yeah.
At least the versions that we watched. And if I may, you know, draw a thread between what we saw, which was essentially breathtakingly beautiful European depictions of heinous patriarchy.
Yes.
That's basically what we watched throughout all these films, is the best coat of paint on supreme ugliness.
If you're feeling particularly like misandrist, this is perfect.
I did take a huckleberry hybrid gummy for red shoes. And I did it because gummies will take like 2 hours to take effect on me, or can take that long. So I was trying meticulously, like, I'm going to eat this 45 minutes before I start watching the red shoes. And I was trying to time it with the dance, when the dance begins.
Yes.
Wow.
And it worked pretty well. Now, the first time I ate a huckleberry hybrid gummy, I actually tracers. I was like, holy fuck, I'm actually seeing tracers from this. It's
whoa.
Yeah, it just affected me that way. It didn't for this time, but I was like, okay, I'm stoned. Like when she puts on the shoes and they tie themselves up to her, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm a little high here. So because the first half you don't really want to be high. You don't want to be high for the beginning because there's a lot to follow. And I was like, so I would even suggest not smoking. Like, usually you want to smoke a little bit before you start a movie or as the movie's credits are rolling. This, if you're going to smoke, I would say maybe 45 minutes in, then get good and baked.
You could just hit play, start packing your bowl. By the time the red shoes starts, you will be ready.
The Red Shoes is available in the TCM hub of HBOMax, Amazon Prime, and the Criterion Channel. There are a whole lot of places to see this one, so you have no excuse. You must watch this movie in blaze as you have never blazed before.
Once once again, we really want to hear from you. You can email us at oldmoviesforyoungstoners@gmail.com or follow us on Insta at oldmoviesforyoungstoners. No numbers, just letters, all one word. We are on Twitter at OM4Y Stoners. That's OM4Y Stoners on Twitter.
Justice for the old hag. Sorry.
Yeah.
Justice for the old hag!
Justice for the old hag.
Don't pay the old hag with a goddamn bag of sand, folks. I don't care how stoned you are. When you go to services from the old hag, you pay her cash. You lay coin upon her palm.
Yeah,
Bitcoin if she'll accept it. You know, I think
or
old
you
hags
could
are
pay her
accepting
with a
crypto.
bag of hash.
A bag
A
of
bag of
hash.
hash would work.
Witches love hash.
Which is
Something they
love
can
hash.
use. Don't give her a bunch of
Yes.
sand, you asshole. And all you gods supporting that shit. That's why we're in the mess we're in today. It's because these damn male gods are supporting these cryptocurrency entrepreneurs and these private equity douches, you know, using their fucking sickle magic to fuck everything up. Just pay the hag, folks. Pay them.
I bet that guy, the guy in the yellow shirt who conned the old hag, I bet he loves NFTs.
Oh, fuck that guy. So that wraps up our fantastic fourth episode where we discussed a woman brought to the brink of hallucinatory madness in the red shoes. Next time, we followed up with two women brought to the brink of hallucinatory madness with Federico Fellini's Juliet of the Spirits and the Czech New Wave phantasmagoria of Valerie and her Week of Wonders. That's all right here on Old Movies for Young Stoners.